Heidi's been working all through the year, and she closes out every month. But now this month she's going to be delayed a little bit because she's also closing the year, and she's closing it to put it in shape and make any adjustments that would be pre-audit. And she wants to make all of those adjustments so that we have very few audit adjustments, which Great Plains comes out and helps so that we can do that. And then once we have that, then we will have our audit. And then our audit won't be complete until they get that information to Great Plains, and then we do the cost report. And then that cost report information comes back, and so it comes back to the audit.
Nothing like a simplified world.
Well, and the problem is, by the way, that we're already halfway through 2020 at that point, but we had to make a budget at the end of 2019, not really understanding what our cash flow or anything else was going to be. And so while we can get pretty good on the expenses, generally speaking, the volume is about like farming. You know, you think you can, but you really can't. And the reimbursement is, okay, can we go to Las Vegas maybe? You know, some of that. And so but we can also, with the cost report estimator, we can run some numbers. We do some pro formas period, and Great Plains does that. So like if we want to try some other service or something like that, we have to make some assumptions on that service, and then we can go through and we can run a cost report estimate on that and see how that will affect us. As a matter of fact, with this cost, and I'm just doing this because I haven't talked to you guys forever, but on the cost report estimator, another thing that we can do is we can look at the expenses by department. And so what I like to do is I put $20,000 expense in each department. You know, I put it in one department and look at what that did to our receivable, and then I move that same $20,000 down and I see what that did, and then I record the result back on there so that I can show that, for example, and I haven't done this recently, and you have to do it every time you have a cost report. I'm not comfortable doing it with the cost report estimator, although we do use that tool to do this. But once you do that, you can identify that there are better places to cut and better places to spend money. For example, the acute nursing service, the nursing staff, is high utilization Medicare. And so what happens is, if I put that $20,000 in there, I'm going to get most of it back, sometimes as high as 95% of it back, which is pretty good. And then if I go down to ER is going to be probably maybe 40, 50%. You know, and so, well, if I'm going to get 40 or 50% of my dollars back, then that's a thought. And so, Les, what difference does all this make? And I'm going to say, as you operate the hospital, and I will have to, as I'm plugged in a little bit more, you know, I'll be pushing this, and I've been pushing it with Kelly, and I don't know how successfully it's been implemented in the past. But what you can do, for example, is, a computer. Computers say they're $1,000 on a computer, right? And they have a lifespan of maybe 5 years or something like that. But they're minor equipment, so they don't get depreciated. They get expensed right away. So if I can use that computer in nursing for over 1 year, then I expense that computer to nursing. Got most of it paid for. Well, and I want the best computers closest to my patients, right? And so I'm going to shift that down to another department who gets a still very hot, serviceable computer, replace that in nursing, and guess what? I've been good with our funds, and I've been good with the patients, and I've been compliant with they made the rules, so I get to play with them. So anyway, that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what that is, and I have learned this. I didn't know this when I started. I've learned a lot during my time at Cheyenne County Hospital, and I would say I've learned a lot more since I went to the management company and been exposed to that. So if somebody asks you, what good is Great Plains, feel free to point at me and say, not him, it's the company behind him. Okay? But I hope I'm worth something to you as well. And so this is just notes from an executive team meeting that we had right away on Monday. And I just felt like I should maybe bring you up to speed on some of that, just a little bit, so you kind of know what I'm thinking when I'm going on. And I full well know that I am missing things, okay? I haven't even gotten fully plugged in yet. I got my Cheyenne County Hospital email, and I missed that, and I've missed several other things that are oh, gee, we had a timeline on it. I said, thank you, so.
Well, if you don't know, you don't know.
Right, exactly. And so I'm trying to get all this stuff caught up, and it's kind of frankly, it's kind of a flying tiger, right? You don't have to put that in minutes. Kind of a flying tiger right now for me. So the number one thing I put down on this is take care of Janelle, his wife. And so we put out a deal and make sure she had meals available and everything else. And so I understand that we may need to do that again. So if any of you, if you feel moved to do that, feel free to take that by.
What are the arrangements as far as services?
My understanding is that they plan to have the services back in Iowa.
Okay.
And I will visit with her about how appropriate she feels about, or how she feels about having something here locally. I know that there are a lot of people that feel like they would love to honor him that way.
Yeah.
And so.
But to make a trip to Iowa is a big commitment.
Right, exactly, right.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah, can you even get back and all that stuff. So anyway, take care of Janelle was the number one thing. The second thing I needed to do is make sure people understand what my availability is, and then I need to make connections and comms and set up chain of command and everything else so that I can be fully operational in that setting. We have an opportunity on 340B to participate with Walmart. I believe it'll bring us $30,000 or $40,000 a quarter, kind of moving back, and so I felt like, well, we better kind of handle that, and the deadline actually is today. And so I've been on the phone with Tim Kerr from Great Plains, who was working with Macro Helix, and he kind of helped me through the Office of Pharmacy Affairs issues on that. And then we put Tammy Sherlock in, and she lit up the 3 pharmacies that we have to do that. And there's the local Walmart, and sounds like 2 distribution centers that we have to do in order to do this. And she likely will also light up the other ones. And the way this works is we can go ahead and do this, and if we learn that it's not working for us, then we don't have to participate.
You're not committed.
We're not committed, exactly. And then the other problem is, though, Kelly's name is on that list, and it takes about 2 weeks to change it. And so I've got to get in there, and I've already tried to do that, and I had the Office of Pharmacy Affairs on with me. I'm throwing myself on a sword here. Had them on the phone with me, and I went through and did all this stuff, and they says, this is what it looks like. And they said, good, press send. So, and it went back, and then I got an email on one of my accounts that said, it shows, the new information shows Kelly put off. And I thought, that's not good. That's not what I said.
Yeah.
That's not what I said. Not even what I thought. I can joke about it now. It's not very funny. But anyway, I'll have to be working on that fairly quickly. And I feel like there's a significant amount of money on the line, and we would love to have that to take back care of our Medicare payable. And by the way, one of the other issues in the Medicare payable is the performance of our accounts receivable is going to be very important in there. Our accounts receivable has jumped up by maybe $700,000-800,000, and I'm thinking, well, gee, you know what? That's just enough if we could get that normalized, get that down. And normal will be at a different place because we have higher volume now. But if I could get that down just a little bit, then that would help us cover that Medicare payable. So I'm planning on going through and doing that. The other thing you should know is that I'm right now, I am working to interface full throttle like I was once upon a time. And I struggled when I left there to let go. I really did. And so even with the crew, I burnt some bridges so I could let go and did some things like that. And now I find myself in a situation like this. So I'm essentially reconnecting here. Let's see, other things on here. CRNA with Kim Swaggart, her resignation in the line there. We've identified 2 CRNAs that would be interested in coming in and filling in, and that would prevent us
To relocate here or just?
to relocate here. And so Kelly was working on that, and some of that, as he was sick there toward the end and finally passed away, some communications perhaps weren't handled as quickly as they could have been. So I met with Kim actually Friday before he passed away, Friday before I talked to him, and she told me about some different things. And so I made some moves quickly over the weekend, and then We have contact Monday, and I've sent some stuff to the attorney, so we'll be working through that. CRNA is horrendously expensive, but it's a necessary.
But you've about got to have it to provide the services
Exactly.
for surgeries
It's
or
one of those
deliveries
things.
or anything else.
That's right. Well, you need a different level of availability for OB. The OB is a very, very expensive service for us here. I'll share with you that when you do that cost recovery guideline on it, you get maybe 95 cents back in nursing. When you get down to OB, you get minus 15%. Because what happens is that's obviously not Medicare patients, right? Yeah. And so it's not a Medicare allowable service. And so what happens is it pulls administrative and general services into that based on the size of the service. And so, well, how do you get through that? Well, you have to price it higher enough, at least 15% higher is your break-even point, and then you need to build your margin on top of that. The problem is our volume here is so low that we could not possibly charge enough to make that fly. And so we have to look at it as a loss leader. And so it's one of the things that holds the hospital's performance down. And so when we talk to you about taxes, that's part of what you're supporting. You know, and I understand that we're having a very difficult time here, but that's the hospital situation. I will come back and talk to you about that again and again. So, CRNA. The other thing that I feel like is very necessary is recruitment for medical staff. And my belief is that we don't ever turn off our recruitment engine. We may put it in neutral from time to time, but we don't ever shut the engine off. And so I'm planning on getting us involved in the Kansas Academy of Family Practice deal they have down in Wichita in June, and then the KU Med Center has recruitment meetings in Wichita and Kansas City at different times. And so we'll be participating in that. And I'm
making your pitches at those locations.
We're going to make our pitch at those locations whether or not we need people.
Yeah.
Okay, and yes, that's expensive, you know, to drive down there and do all this. Great Plains, though, bought the KFP table, and so and that was my fault. And so I bought the table and told Dave, and he says, "Yeah, right, thanks, Les." And so I'm selling spots around the table so that the hospital can get in for as little as $100. So, and you've got the investment getting down there. But even if you had $1,000 a year in there, you know, one locum's day would take care of the cost of that.
It's well worth it.
And when you talk about trying to recruit one, it's crazy not to.
You don't see the payoff until you get the individual in place and they're actually seeing patients, and that's what you hope your payoff is.
Well, and the other advantage of doing it this way, and you get to know people as they're kind of coming up through the program, and you meet people and you think, oh yeah, they look pretty good, you know, and then as you meet them, you think, they looked pretty good last year, you know, and you meet somebody else and I like them, you know, and they have a good reputation, so we can get around. Anyway, there are a lot of angles on that for recruitment. The other thing that we have to do this year is a community health needs assessment, and I've already talked to Carol Sloper, and this is a lead that Kelly's really been excellent, kind of trailing along and picking stuff up, and he's been good to communicate with me. So while I need to get plugged in and am behind on some things, he really left the outfit in pretty good shape. And so we're working on the community health needs assessment. Carol Sloper will help with that. The other thing is we've had a primary care grant, a community-based primary care clinic grant from KDHE, and we've had that probably over 10 or 12 years or something like that. I wrote the first one back when, and I had this habit of stopping at KDHE if I happened to be in Topeka, and I'd buy 4 coffees or something, and I'd go share coffee around and visit with people, and you know, it's like, oh, good, Les, what are you doing? But anyway, I wound up talking to Bobby Stiles there one time, and telling him what we were doing with our county health, because we're one of very, very few county hospitals that operates county health department. I think 2 in Kansas, if the other one is still even doing that. There are none in Nebraska,
none I know of.
None in Colorado. And the reason is, by the way, that's not an allowable cost on your cost report. However, I think it gives us some other advantages. We don't have wars with county health because they're part of us. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's a different approach to things like that. And back when I visited with him about that, and I shared with him what we were doing, how much charity care we had, how much bad debt we had, and all this. I was talking to him. He says, "You know what? I've got a program for you." And he gets on the phone, and they had more people than I had coffee. So they came in there and they started telling me about this primary care clinic program. And pretty soon one of them said, "Let me get you a successful application." And so they gave me one. So I was like, "Okay, well, that's good. So I know what it's supposed to look like." And then they said, "And this is the link to the deal, and we're going to give you this and this and this and this. And we would like to see your application, Les."
Well,
so
that's kind of a thump on the head. Get it done. Get
it done, yeah. And so I got that, and so I've gotten that. I don't know exactly what our payoff to the community is. I think the first year it wasn't that much. It was a lot. It's more than $1 million, $72,000. But the last grant we had from them was $121,000. And I think through the years, I think if we added up the cumulative impact of that, it's been over $1 million coming into the county that we've used to supplement our expenses to the clinic, okay, and with county health and what have you. So we've used it appropriately, and we've used it just like they'd want to. The problem is there's a uniform data set that is useful for the National Health Service Corps, but KDHE also uses it for this HRSA-driven grant to identify the demographics of the people who use the clinic, okay? And if we can't get specific person by person by person by person information, and it is confidential, we have a confidential way we can collect it, but if we can't give them that level of information, and I'm not sure it has to have your name on it, but it has to have some identifier in it so that we can identify individuals. And we have to identify things like, their income status, if they're on Medicaid or anything else like that. We have to be able to identify all those things. We haven't been able to do that. And so we're going to work with Cerner to see what we can do to do that. And they changed the rules so that we had to give them this higher level of information. In the past, we'd done a survey for a month or something like that, and then they extrapolate. Well, they don't want a survey, they want all of it. And so we're going to have to get that individual level data to them in order to do that. And I'm sorry, am I getting into your time?
Yeah, we might hurry a little.
Okay, all right. Anyway, long story short, I called them back and I says, you guys have made a huge change on us. We've been through loss of this, that, and everything, cried in my coffee. And so we're going to have an opportunity to do that.
Good.
Let's see, the board meeting is this afternoon, and the rest of it is what it is. But
you want?
Yeah,
okay.
There's a copy of the contract.
One thing that we've kind of been doing the last couple of years is any board that is appointed by the Board of Commissioners, we're trying to get each one of these boards to conform the same. For an example, let's take the Fair Board. How we've been doing it is if there is interest for Fair Board members, that Fair Board has a meeting and they discuss those applicants. And then they bring the applications into us with a recommendation of who they would like to see, because we don't know your needs per se. So what we would like to do is there are 2 applications here for hospital board member. We would like to see the existing hospital board review those and then make any recommendations. Now, that's no guarantee we will appoint the individual they wish, but we do want to hear from them. We want their input, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I applaud you for that. I think that's a good
We're trying
process.
to get all the boards, airport board, hospital board.
And I've been
Fair
attend
board.
the meeting. I've talked to Shauna, and I'll bring these and explain to the board what
Okay, very good.
commissioners are wanting to do.
Well, it kind of helps us too, because a lot of these individuals that apply for these positions, we don't even know who they are, much less
Right.
what they have to contribute. But the board they're applying for, if they have input into it and they can see potential either faults or pluses,
Right,
they can bring those to our attention, and it helps make the decision,
right.
makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking that angle on it. I think that's an excellent angle.
So if you would explain that with Scott at the board meeting this afternoon.
Okay,
The only other thing we need, I'm going to kind of rely on Scott here, is just a verbal from Dr. Lick, yes, I would like, or I will be the county health.
What's it called?
Yeah, I thought, was we?
county health officer or something like that.
Yeah, so we got a name for it.
County health officer.
Yeah,
I
county.
got it,
health
I got it right?
Yeah. How about it?
And it's
Yes.
my fault. I should have reached out to her before today.
But if you'll do that, I think we have a verbal that she would still do it, or we haven't heard anything that she will not. But I think it'd be nice
we
to
should ask her
ask her
every
in
year.
person.
Okay, very good. I will do that and convey that to you. Or
We'll have Scott.
have Scott do it. Okay,
Yeah.
great, okay. Very good. Is there anything else I can do?
I don't think so, other than our condolences, and I realize it's a lot of work. I'm assuming the hunt is on now for,
Right.
replacement.
We're going to get rolling on that. Since we're so close to the board meeting, I want to visit with the board first.
sure. All right,
Will we want to send some flowers or something like that at some point? Does that come out of the clerk?
I don't know, we generally have not done that.
No?
But it's not outside the realm of possibilities. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. All right, thank you, Les.
Thanks very much. I might stick around for this here.
Okay.
Hey, that's how I am. Good to see you.
Well, actually, Candy, your name is on the agenda, so why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay. So we wanted to meet to kind of talk about the High Plains Mental Health contract. And we have questions, but then I kind of wanted to share maybe the data. Dave brought the data on how many patients Bob saw. And then I kind of wanted to maybe share the bigger picture of the mental health work that we've been doing with my grant, just so you're aware as well. So I guess our questions were, when do we sign these contracts or for High Plains Mental Health? That's just a basic
We
question.
don't sign a contract.
We have,
Anytime?
no, that's not.
All we
not
do
our-
is give an appropriation.
We give the money
Okay.
as
Okay,
far
so then it's
as,
just a budget issue.
yes.
Okay. And so when is the budget
We would like to see the
Set.
request, I'll say June.
due? Okay.
Yeah, that gives us a little bit of time, because we need to have it done no later than September. October 1's the actual date, isn't it?
And then when is
Budget?
that funding available?
We need to have that done in July.
July.
By end of July.
End of July, I'm sorry. But yeah, if you can get that to us in June,
Okay.
that would be a help.
And then when are the funds available? Is
Be
that
the following year.
1 year? So we're a year.
Yes.
Yes.
So
It'd
if,
be, I believe it's statutes, it's January 20th, and I could be off on that, when those appropriations go out. But
So
it's
if you-
somewhere around there.
if you make those appropriation requests in June and they are approved and the monies are there, you would get it in January.
Okay. And so basically we have a whole nother year without the High Plains Mental Health. Okay.
You're talking about as far as,
They have an appropriation this year.
yes, there's monies there.
For 2020.
Do you know how much that is?
Yeah, if I can find my budget. $6,360.
How much is it, Steph?
$6,360.
So, Dave, so we have not re-upped our contract, is that the situation? I'm sorry, I'm coming in a little bit.
I think
What is
the
it?
request for the 2020 budget based on our board's fair funding model was 17,000. I believe that's what was requested.
That's what was requested.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm Dave Anderson.
Sorry.
I'm Director of Clinical Programs for High Plains. Kaylee Connor's with me.
Roger Hoffman.
Hi.
Can you stand up again?
That's
I
fine.
apologize.
I can
I'm
do that.
Kaylee. Nice to
I'm
meet
Willie
you.
Hutchins.
And our board
Nice to meet
members, which you all appoint.
Yes.
And so Candy asked us if we would come and answer any questions you all might have about the funding and the outreach office.
So if I might interject here, just a little clarification. So I think, just so everybody's aware of what happened, grant funds had paid that full $17,000 request for a few years. And that was that large.
It made up the rest of it.
With the other 11,000 or whatever it is then. But that was the large function. When that grant went away, then so did that extra support. What we were getting from High Plains with that additional money is we were having a therapist here weekly in our community seeing patients. When it came back down to the $6,000 whatever dollar level, we lost that therapist in our community.
And we knew that. And we knew that would happen. There was just not the funds available to make that request possible.
I'm just wondering what are, because Kelly and Erica had both asked about grant funding to cover that, but that's, like, it's not sustainable. You know, we could maybe get that for a year, or like the grant that we had. So we increased, is that what we increased to get the therapist in the county? Right?
Yes, their request. And I might point out, by the way, that request came way too late. We'd already set the budget.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I emphasize, the sooner you can get those numbers to us, the more time we have to look at it and discuss it, and then make an educated decision, not just a shot in the dark.
Yeah. And I apologize coming in midway, because we didn't get to that. We were meeting with Kelly on Monday for him to share the other perspective, so I feel like we're a little bit coming in saying, what do we need to do to kind of, educate.
From what I'm gathering, Candy,
Yeah.
is you're looking to make a request for a larger budget in 2021. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're looking at a way to resolve it, yes, in some manner.
Okay, it's really tough. It would be an understatement to say our budget is fragile. So, not to say that it's not outside the possibility that we could increase your budget, but to double it, just not going to happen.
Well, it's almost triple.
Yeah.
Are you having this problem in all the other counties?
No, we are, I assume you all get a copy of the data that shows the funding for each county, the funding model and how that's all. And then, so some counties were a little ahead, some counties right on, and some a little behind. I don't think the center has really asked for an increase from counties, knowing the struggles that have occurred really for quite a long time. I think it's been probably close to 10 years since we've asked for an increase. And we've struggled with cuts from the state, and we really have worked hard to kind of push out into communities. We know for some people, even though Goodland's not that far away, for some people, if you're 35 miles away, you might as well be 1,000 miles away if they don't have reliable transportation or can't get off work or arrange for daycare, those kinds of things. I live in Waukene. I know having a therapist there, our numbers have gone up dramatically just because it's now available local, and it's much easier for people to take advantage of. And frankly, it occurs in a setting that's not the mental health center, so they can go into the clinic and be seen. And I think that reduces the stigma some people have about getting mental health services.
Well, I encourage you to keep looking for other financial streams. based on our budget caps,
That's what's the aggravating thing is the state is cutting back your funding. And then the state put regulations on us and a budget cap.
Right.
I mean, they're whamming us from two directions.
and quite honestly,
I don't know how to handle it.
that money is
I mean,
just not
we want to
there.
give it to you, but
It,
I don't know where
we
we're
just
gonna
can't
get
do
it.
it.
And I think I'm trying to think like bigger. How do we meet the need? Because obviously, you know, when Bob was here, it was easier for particularly our low income families. And